Hey girl, hey, it's Tisa. Welcome to Rise Up, Empowering Women podcast. We plan to really dive deep into stepping into our power and to becoming the women who God called us to be. So, let's do this together. I'm ready for this journey. Are you? Hello, queens. I am so happy to be back with you for another episode. Listen, so I had initially planned to do this episode on another topic, which I'm still going to cover the topic, but it was just so heavy on my heart this morning to share this with you. And it was even more so a confirmation to go ahead and do this episode after I had my devotion this morning. We do our Wake Up with Jesus Zooms in our group team page. So it tied into my personal devotion as well. And so you guys know how I always talk about God winks. I just felt like that this was a God wink this morning, and with so many different things that were just super heavy on my heart over the last few days, I just felt called to go ahead and do this episode first ahead of the other one. We will definitely get to that one, but I just feel like this one is, it's very needed today. So I titled it Walking in the Pit. And what I mean by that is, so often we've been given a battle or battles or, we're going through things and they just seem absolutely impossible to get out of, whether it's being hurt by loved ones or friends or strangers, or, going through a really, really tough time financially, spiritually, mentally, all of the things. We face these hard times and these situations where it just seems impossible. It feels like we're completely by ourselves, that there's no end in sight, that, we just cannot get out of them. And it's like we're in a pit and we're trapped and we just see no way in sight. But I just want to remind you that even in all of that, mess, even in those darkest moments, God, He's always with us. Just the way that Joseph was trapped in the pit, God was with him in that same way He is with us. And so that's why I really wanted to touch on this subject. I know that there is a lot of people, including myself, who've been in situations where you just feel like there's absolutely no way out. Like you don't see the end in sight. You don't know why you're going through these things, especially if you feel like you are on the right track. You're making the right moves. You're making the changes. You're walking and doing the right thing. You're serving God. You're being kind to yourself. You're being kind to others. You're doing the things, and it's just like everything around you is still falling apart. It's still not going the way you want. The plans are still not coming through. Those promises still haven't been fulfilled, and you just feel stuck. You feel stuck in that pit. You feel stuck in that moment, in that situation, and it's lonely, and you feel like you're by yourself, but you're never alone. God is always with you. And I mentioned Joseph because that was a part of our devotion today. We were talking about how sometimes we get discouraged. We have these promises, we have these goals and dreams, we have these things that, we know and we believe are for us. We know that they're meant to be ours, but we just don't see any way out. And then it seems like one thing after another comes against us, whether it's people, whether it's situations, our health, our finances. It seems like everything is just coming against us. Life is messy. It's unkind. There's loss. People hurt you. There's pain and suffering, overwhelming stress, fear, anger, frustration, and betrayal. Even in that, God is with you, even then. And I think it's a really incredible story. If you haven't read or heard the story of Joseph, I encourage you to definitely open up your word and find it in Genesis and read about it. But just to briefly sum it up, Joseph, he was the youngest son, and he had many brothers older than him, yet his father favored him. He favored him, and he loved him more than his other sons. And his sons knew that, and they were so jealous of Joseph. They were jealous of his gifts. They were jealous of the love that his father had for him. And Joseph was blessed, and he was given dreams. God gave him dreams and visions, and when he shared those, it made them even more jealous. It made them even more angry. slavery. So in that, they betrayed Joseph. They threw him in a pit. They took his jacket and they ripped it up, and they told their father that he was dead, and they sold him into slavery. And even in the midst of that, he went into slavery. He was a slave. He faced all these different things. He was even thrown in prison at one point. He faced all of these battles, all of these situations. But the thing that I love about the story is in the text, it constantly lets us know that God was with him. God was with him. He was with him in the pit. He was with him in slavery. He was with him when he was in jail and in prison. He was with him even in all of those bad moments, all of that heartache, all of that betrayal, and, all of the things that were going on around him, all of the horrible, terrible things that had been thrown against him, betrayal, all of those things. God was still with him. He was with him in all of that. And so much good came from it. If you fast forward and you go through the story, you see that his dreams were fulfilled. He had dreams and visions that he was standing and that his family was bound before him. And if you go through to the end, through all the trials, you'll see that is what happens in the end. Even with all of the mess, even with all the trials, the pit, the slavery, the prison, God still turned it for good because he was with him in the midst of that. And Joseph held on to his faith. He walked in faith. He obeyed. He loved those who hurt him and persecuted him and thrown him in prison and threw him in the pit. He still walked in faith with God. He still didn't let any of those things waver him, and God was with him in the middle of that. And I think it's so incredible to know that even in our hard times, when it seems like we're alone and we can't get through these things, that God is always with us. He's literally always with us. His hand is in every single thing, in the darkest of times, in the best of times. He is with us, ladies. And like I said before, even in all of that, all those trials, all of those things, Joseph didn't let his faith waver. He didn't get weary in doing good. He still showed up and did God's works. He still acted in love. He still continued out to do the things that God called him to do, even in the midst of that, because God was with him. And another part of that was walking in the faith, in the troubles. Our devotion was tied into that. It was tied into the story of Joseph. And then my personal devotion, it's so wild. I don't even know why I say it's wild anymore. I just need to come to expect it at this point, because literally every time we do a devotion, it always ties into my personal devotion. And it was talking about walking by faith and how it seems like we're going through all of these things and we're just sitting still, like nothing is happening. No changes are happening. We don't see the end goal. We don't see the progress, but yet it's still happening because God's plan, it's so much bigger than ours, and he's stretching and he's working it out in the biggest of ways that we don't even see. And it's like the worship song, even when I don't see it, he's working. Even when I don't feel it, he's working. He's always working it out for us. And it's a beautiful song by Jonathan Traylor. If you guys don't know him, I encourage you to look him up. He's absolutely incredible. But he's got a song called Bigger Dreams. And the chorus says, your dreams for me are bigger than I can imagine. They're bigger than you can imagine. And then there's a bridge in there, and it says, what you have for me is for me, and no one can take that away. Your plans for me are perfect, so I will trust you and obey. And it's just a constant reminder. I see all of these reminders because like you, I get discouraged too. Like I said before, I'm in a season right now and it's uncomfortable and there's some loss, there's some betrayal, there's all of these things. And sometimes you can feel like you are just alone or you're not going to see your way out, even though you've been given the dream, even though you've been given the vision, even though God has already told you what his plans are for you in some sort shorter way. You just don't see him, And so I think it's just so beautiful that we can be reminded that his plans for us, they're so much bigger than we can imagine. They're so much bigger than we can dream of. But we have to trust him. We have to trust him and obey. We have to walk in that faith, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we're in the pit and it's dark and it's ugly and we're being betrayed and hurt and all of these turmoil going on around us, that he is with us and he's working it out for our good, because he turns beauty to ashes. And one thing it says in here, it says, for the earth to make a complete rotation in 24 hours, it's got to spin that fast. It doesn't look or feel as though you're moving. It feels like you're sitting still, but you're actually whirling. This is much like our dailiness of life. You can work hard and pray hard day after day and not feel as though you're making any progress. But in God's bigger plan, there is a lot of movement. You just can't see it. This is when God stretches your faith and he encourages you to keep living with all hope and trusting that he is with you, working a way to complete the work he started in you. That was from my personal devotion. And like I said, it ties into Joseph's story, because even though he was thrown in a pit and betrayed by his brothers, even though he was sold into slavery, and even in that slavery, he was thrown into prison because he was betrayed by his master's wife. She lied on him and said these things, and he was thrown into prison, and he was in all of these hardships, he still continued to trust God and obey. He trusted God. He shared his visions. He shared his dreams. And because of that, because he obeyed, because he held on to the faith, and he continued to do God's work, even in the uncomfortable times, even in the pit, even in slavery, even in prison, God was faithful, and he showed up, and he made Joseph ruler. So just know that even in this hard times, even when we don't feel like we can see a way out and we don't know which way to go, and we've been betrayed and we've been hurt by people, because trust me, I've been hurt by people. I mean, like I said, Joseph, his own brothers, they were the ones who threw him in the pit, and they sold him into slavery. His own loved ones, the people, his flesh and blood, the people that are supposed to love and care about you, they hurt him. And that can be you. That happens so often in life. We're betrayed, we're hurt by people, situations don't go the way that we plan, and we're just left feeling stuck. I just encourage you to continue walking in faith. Do not grow weary in doing good. Don't build up a wall of bitterness and hatred and feel like, well, you can't go any further because all of these things have happened to you. Because God is right there with you. He's with you in the uncomfortable times. He never said that there wouldn't be battles. He never said that there wouldn't be storms and trials. He said that he's with us in those. He's with us in the middle of that mess, even when we don't see it. He's working. Even when we don't feel it, he's working. He's always working it out for our good. So, I'll leave you with Jeremiah 29:11. It's one of my absolute favorite verses. I have it on my desk. I always look to it because it reminds me, even in the hard moments, in the moments of uncertainty, in the moments when I feel like I'm in the pit, I'm in the battle, I'm in the prison, I'm in the slavery, or whatever you want to call it, these hard times, it gives me hope to remind me that God is with me and his plans are so much bigger than mine. Even when I don't see him, he's working it out. And so Jeremiah 29:11, it says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Just listen to that. I'm going to read it one more time. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So just know, if you're in the pit right now, if you're struggling and you're going through things, keep walking in faith in that pit, because it's all working out for your good. And God is right there with you in the middle of that mess, in the middle of those struggles, in the middle of that heartache. And he's going to turn your beauty for ashes. He's going to make it all right, ladies. Okay, until next time. Hey. what an incredible episode. I think it is so beautiful and so comforting to know that even in the midst of our trials, even when we're in the pit, we're in the darkest of times, that God is always with us. He's with us in those moments. And even when we don't see it, even when we may not feel it, He's working all things out for our good. He just wants us to walk in faith and trust Him and know that He makes all things new. He gives beauty for ashes, and this too shall pass. Ladies, I hope and pray that this episode touched you in any way. If it did, listen, do me a favor. Like this episode, share it with a friend, and tag me so that way I can shout you out and show you some love for tuning in with us. I hope that you are choosing joy. You're being kind to yourself and others. And remember, if you cannot help, please don't hurt. See ya.